and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And this week we're going to talk about the latest on the struggle against Russia's anti-gay law. And we're going to be joined by Russian-American journalist Masha Gessen and two of her children to discuss the dire situation at length.
A very special show. We, in other news, will mourn the death of Jose Julio, the first out gay political candidate in the United States and a drag and gay pioneer in San Francisco. He has died at 91.
A New Mexico county is the latest to go rogue, issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples.
When they don't have permission to yet. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has gone a little rogue from the Tea Party by signing a bill banning reparative therapy for gay children.
While he's still in court opposing same-sex marriage.
Yeah, fascinating.
Legal same-sex marriages have begun in New Zealand.
And WWE superstar Darren Young has come out.
More trouble for the Florida teen charged with having underage sex with her girlfriend.
And Germany is making way for designation of yourself as a third sex. But mostly, we are very excited and honored to have members of the Gessen family here today. Masha Gessen is an old pal who was born in Russia, moved here as a teenager with her family. I see a little parallel here. Escaping anti-Semitism in Russia at the time. Was here for about 10 years, became a very well-known journalist for Out Week, The Advocate, worked with ACT UP. We worked together as activists. It's great to see you again.
It's good to see you.
And now you moved back to Russia 22 years ago, and now you're coming back here.
Right.
And you have two of your three children here with you. We're very honored to have Yolka, your daughter, 11 years old, and Vova, your son, who is celebrating his 15th birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Very happy birthday.
How are you celebrating? Okay.
Eating sushi.
Well, sushi.
We already kind of celebrated it with our family, like 18th of August. Yeah.
That makes sense ahead of time because you're in the midst of a big trip at the moment. Well, Masha, there are tons of things to talk about Russia, but I want to sort of start by setting the scene of what Russia as a whole is like these days, because we're focused on the gay stuff, but I want to put it in the larger context first.
Right.
Oh, and I should say, of course, that you've gone on to be a hugely important and award-winning journalist in Russia, and wrote a book called The Man Without a Face about Vladimir Putin that was quite provocative, and I'm fascinated that you've survived 22 years back in Russia.
Right.
But so tell us what it's like there now.
Well, yeah, I'm glad we're doing that because it actually puts everything in context. Because the anti-gay stuff that's going on is very much a part of the larger thing we're living through, which is a crackdown. And the crackdown began a year and a half ago when Putin came back into office for his third illegal term as president, a 6-year term. And it began with severe restrictions on public gatherings, with new laws that you may have heard about on foreign agents,
yes.
And that sort of thing. And the gay and lesbian stuff falls into that. It's sort of this repressive machine that's out to restrict life and space and discussion as much as possible.
Just tell me briefly, how in the world does this guy continue to retain power?
Oh, that's a good question. I read a whole book about it, but I'm still a little confused. No, I mean, look, actually, it's not that complicated. He came into office 13 years ago. The first thing he did was take control of the media. The second thing he did was destroy the electoral system. So essentially, there are no elections in Russia, and there haven't been any elections in effect in 8 years. I mean, there are some local elections, there are some partial elections that are allowed to happen, like with the mayoral election in Moscow right now. But basically, there are no direct elections to any office except the office of president. And even that's not an open and fair election because the Kremlin has complete control of the media. And he has also reversed judicial reform, made the courts completely subservient to the executive branch. That's how he retains power. He's destroyed all the mechanisms for removing him from power. That will happen eventually, but it will happen by the system sort of collapsing in on itself, because all the democratic mechanisms, all the mechanisms of accountability, all the mechanisms even of protest have been destroyed.
So you've been there for 22 years?
20 years
20
full-time,
years,
yeah.
and you've grown up there. How is it feeling different now in recent years?
How does it feel different now than a few
Living
years
there.
ago? Yeah, well, it's, you know, we lived through an incredibly exciting time a couple of years ago when the protest movement started. And actually, Yolka was very active in the protest movement. She, at one point, I actually started a group called the Protest Workshop, which was modeled after ACT UP, which was sort of a clearinghouse for direct action. And Yolka was very active in it, and she came up with some great actions. And it felt like change was imminent. All of a sudden, things that we had been talking about in our kitchens for years were talked about in the street. It felt like there were hundreds of thousands of like-minded people, millions of like-minded people coming out into the streets. That lasted about 8 months, from December to, well, 6 months, yeah, from December to May. And then it all came to an abrupt halt with Putin coming back into office, and with the crackdown beginning, with people going to jail for peaceful protest. The Pussy Riot case being the most famous, but that's not the only case. And it's felt like space closing in. I mean, it's depressing. Just to give you a quick example, in June we went to. For the weekend, we went with our friends to celebrate the anniversary of their wedding, which is something that we do every year. And last year, we were there, and it was such an exciting time. And then the husband of in that couple said a toast. He said, "It's been a horrible year," and everybody knew what he was talking about. And I thought, this is amazing. You know, in our large circle of friends, no one has died, no one has become gravely ill. You know, some people have broken up, and some people have lost their jobs. But basically, nothing has happened to say it's been a horrible year. But he was there saying that toast, and it was very clear that, yes, we have all lived through something that feels disastrous and depressing and just unremitting.
And
Power doesn't concede power.
And we've read about a backlash against immigrants over the last 10 years in Russia. Not that we don't have our own backlash here with our fences and all that other kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's been going on, and now we're talking about a wave of anti-gay violence, and you're actually feeling threatened that they might that they're thinking of taking away children from gay people.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty well-founded fear. The head of the Committee on the Family in Parliament, who is the moving force behind passing some of this anti-gay legislation, said we're going to pass laws creating mechanisms for removing children from same-sex families.
Well, they've sort of done this by passing this law, which forbids any positive mention of homosexuality, supposedly in front of minors.
Right.
But when you have 2 children and you're an out lesbian living with your partner, it's hard not to be, giving positive images to children.
Exactly, they've kind of outlawed our family.
Exactly. Yeah. So, Yolka, as an activist, how has this been for you, living in this atmosphere? What's school like? What's it like with your friends?
Well, my friends aren't really always talking about it, but friends that are older than me, I talk with them about it, and they're okay with it, and they are sometimes really sad that it's happening, and but sometimes I had parts that I was really angry when kids were saying something about my family that was mean, and I would just make them scared, kind of.
Now, you don't seem so scary, Yolka. What do you do to make them scared?
Well, I don't want to make them scared. They're just once there was a boy that said like lesbians are crazy, and I said, well, then my family is crazy, and like in a tone that was pretty like, well, not pretty, and he was kind of like, he was scared, but like he didn't think that I could say that, and then I said that if you're gonna say that again, you're gonna have like talks with the principal, and he was scared.
Very good.
Of course, even in our country here, they did classify us as crazy until 1973, and then the American Psychiatric Association changed that.
You do realize that's ancient history, right? 1973?
Yeah, no. And in Russia also, psychiatrically?
It was, there was a practice of putting lesbians in psychiatric hospitals up until the early 90s. But
So,
it's, you know, it's been a generation.
Vova, have you seen a change? What is life like for you in your daily life with these new laws?
I wasn't living in those new laws for a long time, so
Well, they're new.
yeah. It's just now I have to move to America, and I'm in America now,
Yes.
Welcome.
and yeah, my
Going to a very special school, and
yes,
congratulations.
thank you. The kids in my class, they don't actually like care about it, or like they don't think about it, because it's like it's not their problem. Except I have one friend who said that if they try to take me away, his family will adopt me.
Oh, that's sweet.
They were pretty amazing. They're actually a Russian Orthodox family that wrote us a letter saying that they'd heard about the problem, and that if we wanted for backup to have them, you know, sign guardianship papers so that we
Very
can
good.
take away.
Speaking of which, the Russian Orthodox Church now, there's obviously not one source of this new backlash, and it's very, very complicated, but we do read that the church has been very emphatic about this, but we also read that 87% of the people support the new law, so it's not from one place, is it?
Well, somewhat at the behest of American right-wing crazies who've gone over there and promoted this point of view, yes?
I don't know. I haven't seen much of the American trace.
Well, they're bragging about it.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's funny, because of course, you know, the whole campaign in Russia is very much an anti-Western campaign.
Yes, exactly.
Nationalism.
Right, right. It's well, it's, you know, it's Putin's attempt to consolidate his constituency, and he
And
needs
where
to
the
consolidate them
scapegoats.
against somebody.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's against the West, and you know, there's nothing that embodies the depraved influence of the West in Russia to the extent that gays and lesbians do. So we're a first target. We're not going to be the only target. But we're sort of the perfect other, the perfect foreign agent.
So, talk a little about the violence that we hear as a byproduct of this. That these laws have sort of given permission to right-wing thugs who now seduce and attack gay people.
Yeah, I don't even know where to start, because there have been a number of different kinds of violence that seem to be traceable directly to these laws. One is just because there's been a real concerted hate campaign on television, you know, day in and day out. This is on television. So there seems to be just a rise in street violence. And there was a horrifying case in Volgograd where a young man was apparently talking to his buddies in the street, drinking beer, and he mentioned being gay, and they raped him and killed him. And it's not even entirely clear that he was gay, but somehow in the course of this drunken conversation that was turning on this television hate campaign, they concluded that he was gay and started raping him. Another ongoing story is this neo-Nazi campaign where they seduce, they draw out gay men and teenagers and then humiliate them on camera and you know, film it, post it to social networks, and sort of it's a self-perpetuating, absolutely horrifying thing that seems to be highly organized. Another is just random nighttime violence. There was an incident a couple of weeks ago in a trendy bar in central Moscow, you know, half a mile from our house, where just a bunch of kids who looked like hipsters, and 2 of them were apparently gay, the rest of them weren't, were beaten up by other customers in this bar, and security intervened to remove the hipsters from the bar. So to stop the altercation.
Yeah, that does begin to sound like Nazi Germany.
So public gay life is essentially forbidden, but some people say, well, we have bars, we have this. There is an underground social life that people have been enjoying for a while. Is that also being stopped?
It's becoming trickier and trickier because there have been repeated raids. There was a massive raid on an occasional gay party in Moscow, where something like 1,000 people got their documents taken, their information taken down. Several of them face drug charges, which is related and not related necessarily. But that raid and similar raids are clearly a result of a police campaign to crack down on gay life. Again, they see, we actually got hold of some of the police memos on this, and they very clearly see this as part of the good fight.
Yes.
So it's not just cracking down on gays. It's all sort of in a mess in these memos. You know, foreign agents and gays engage in protest activity and use drugs. That's almost an exact quote. You know, but that's sort of the very primitive ideological foundation of these crackdowns.
Well, let's turn to what the world is trying to do about this and what we are hoping to do and what's the best thing to do. There's we're part of this Queer Nation revival that it's trying to...
which is incredibly exciting.
It's exciting to us, what we've accomplished, or think we've accomplished in a very short period of time. But the debate is out there about what is the right thing to do. Now, I'm a great believer that everything is the right thing to do, but there's talk about what is, leave it to the activists in Russia, which activists, or should we be pressuring from outside, and should we have a sort of happy face campaign or an angry campaign, and should we be trying to do something about the Olympics or not, or corporate sponsors or corporations doing business in Russia to a big extent, could they have an effect? And what about the G20 meeting in September? And what about the IOC meeting? And what about Obama? And what about Stoli vodka?
All right. Okay.
Okay, I'm with you.
I'm laying out the
everything
menu.
is the right thing to do. I mean, I am completely on board with that. But a couple of points that I would make. First of all, there's this argument that boycotting the Olympics is not the right thing to do because it's not going to change Russian homophobia. And that it would be so much more constructive, I'm quoting the argument, to have people on the medal stand with rainbow flags or holding hands or whatever.
Where they would then be thrown in jail by the IOC.
Yes.
Or removed from the Olympics.
Right. But the thing is, and this I think is a very important point, the problem is not Russian homophobia. I mean, yes, there are those polls that show that there's overwhelming support for these laws, but it's a Kremlin-instigated campaign. And it's not societal homophobia that we're fighting. Most of the people in Russia who are in support of these laws didn't think about gays and lesbians until the Kremlin made them think about gays and lesbians, until they started this concerted campaign on state-controlled television. And I think the truth be told, hate sells everywhere. If you had a campaign like this, on every national network in the States, running for a year, I think there would also be
It got
support.
George Bush reelected in 2004.
Exactly.
Arguably.
We'll have that argument another time. So, so I think we have to think about the Kremlin as a target. And if you think about it in those terms, the Olympics are Putin's personal project. I think there's a very good argument to be made that he wanted to come back into office so much for the Winter Olympics. He wants to be president of a country that hosts the Olympics. He personally went to lobby the IOC when they were considering Russia's candidacy.
So on that one point, let me understand. He knows the Olympics are coming. Why would he do something so confrontational on the verge of it? I mean, you would think he would wait. I mean,
I don't think it occurred to him that this was going to happen.
They did not think there was going to be such a huge reaction. And, they were testing the waters for a while. And it took a year for the anti-gay legislation to pass on the federal level, and it had passed on regional levels before. And Madonna protested during her, bless her, during her concert in St. Petersburg. But otherwise, there wasn't an overwhelming Western reaction. And I think there was a pretty good calculation that it's not like the Jews. They tried the Jews. The Jews did not work out so well for the Soviet Union. But really, gays and lesbians were not going to get Obama, speaking out. So thought the Kremlin. It turned out to be a major miscalculation. It's lovely to see them squirm right now because what's happening right now is that on the one hand they really want the Olympics. On the other hand, the Olympic Charter says the IOC cannot have the Olympics if all the athletes and spectators cannot be protected. So the IOC has asked for assurances from the Russian government that the laws will not be applied to openly gay athletes. The Russian government has tried to give private assurances while publicly saying that the law will be enforced. Because, of course, there's no way they can sell it to the Russian public that they're going to cave in to the depraved West and tolerate their horrible ways during the Olympics. The longer we keep them scoring, the nicer it is. They've stepped right into the trap that they set for themselves with these laws. And that alone is reason enough to keep the pressure up.
And you were surprised the law passed. You said you were given, not assurances, but people said, oh, it's not going to happen.
I wasn't surprised, especially. I really wanted to believe it wasn't going to happen.
And then it passed unanimously.
And then it passed unanimously. Yes, unanimously. There was not a single person in the Russian parliament.
Abstention.
Yeah, I mean, it had 3 readings, so there were a couple of people who didn't take part in the vote, but there wasn't a single member of parliament who dared vote against it.
Well, we have
now,
that.
what about going after corporations? Because that seems to me to be a good leverage point with the government.
I think we should go after corporations. I think we should also boycott all Russian and protest all Russian products. The Bolshoi is a theater that lives by traveling. It's funded by the Kremlin, by the state.
I'm taking notes.
Me too.
The director of the Bolshoi is appointed by the prime minister. It is a state theater in the purest sense of the word.
Okay.
It has a very loyal gay and lesbian audience everywhere it goes. Well, that audience should let the Bolshoi know what it thinks of the Kremlin's policies. And I also, I want to talk about the goals for a second. I mean, we're not going to get them to repeal the homosexual propaganda laws or the ban on adoptions. That's not going to happen because that would really be seen as caving in. But what could happen is they could at least delay or possibly, entirely table the other laws on creating mechanisms for removing children from same-sex families. And that, that's cold comfort in some ways, but it would be a huge victory for the families that are in Russia.
And maybe tone down the rhetoric and maybe tone down enforcement.
Exactly.
Not to get into strategizing here, but is there a face-saving way to get out of this? I mean, what people hear often, I think, and what I'm hearing from people in Russia is, who support this is we're protecting children, and we certainly want to protect people against child molesters and all those kinds of things. Is there a way to rewrite it to say, of course we're against, molesting children, and that's what we really meant, or something, I don't know, and then we still have this law, and adult gay people, fine.
Conceivably, it could also, as Anne said, they could sort of dial back their enforcement. At this point, they haven't quite made up their minds about enforcement. Enforcement, unfortunately, in Russia is not the most important part of the story, because of course it's an incredible corruption tool.
Yeah.
What happens is the police go to, say, the producers who brought the group Rammstein to St. Petersburg, and say, okay, they had a dildo on stage during the concert. That's clear propaganda of homosexuality. Pay up, or we're going to launch a prosecution case against you. The fines, are about $25,000. So it's easier to give the police $15,000 and get out of being prosecuted. That's really difficult to fight.
And what about prosecution of some of this violence? We're hearing that that it just doesn't happen essentially, or does it? And that would be something that everybody ought to be able to unite behind. We don't favor killing people over this.
Right, or yes, beating people up when they go drinking. So are there good
prosecutions of some of these crimes?
That's a little tricky because every time you get in bed with the Russian police, you're asking for trouble. Yeah, or the prosecutor's office. There's no such thing as a good prosecution in Russia. So I think public condemnation of these crimes is actually a better goal to set.
Getting them off the YouTube equivalent would be nice too.
Yes, getting them off the YouTube equivalent, getting their social network accounts shut down.
And what this is all, I think, leading to is you need a new government, you need a new system, you need something better in living conditions.
Oh, absolutely. Ultimately, this will only end when Putin ends.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to people who were planning or are planning to visit Russia these days? Safe? Or, I'm talking
Should
about
they go or not?
LGBT people.
Don't go.
Andy Cohen made the right decision not to go to Russia for the Miss Universe pageant.
Oh, God.
That's our next
That's
target.
hilarious. Yes. Perfect.
All right. Well, good luck with all of this. Good luck with coming to America. You're actually following in your mother's footsteps by coming here at this point, as she did. Do you see a time when you can go back and?
I can't.
Yeah, I mean, Vova's situation is that he's adopted. So he's a direct target of these laws.
Even
which
in
is why-
retrospect,
Yeah.
even if the adoption's already been done, they can undo it.
There's such a thing as an annulment of adoption in Russia. And with
That
the-
would be crazy, Vova.
That would.
What about the actual kids at the brand?
Biological?
biological kids.
I think you're both actual kids.
Yes.
Yeah,
You mean
sorry.
biological? Yeah. Yeah, what about it?
It's legally it should be the same. It's not quite the same, but it's scary. That's what we're all getting at. Yeah.
Right.
That's why you're all here, for your mother and all of us to protect you and make you feel safe and at home.
And please help us make our country better.
Yeah, because this is not a perfect place either, in case you thought it was. So you can still be an activist here. We need that.
Yoko was worried about that. She said, "What am I going to fight?"
Believe me.
Yeah, okay.
Plenty to fight.
Come talk to us later. We'll tell you plenty to
And
fight. Well,
happy
we're real
birthday.
happy birthday, Vova.
Thank you.
We're very happy to have you all here and see you looking well and in good shape. And we'll continue to follow what's going on in Russia and with you. And Masha, welcome to you. And
Thank you.
Great to have you back.
Honored to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
And we'll be right back with more of the news. Well, that Masha is amazing. You know, the fact that she has been so out and so anti-Putin and such a prominent out lesbian journalist for so many years in Russia is just astonishing.
Some dissidents don't do so well,
Absolutely.
like Bradley Manning and
Look,
Glenn Greenwald's husband.
We'll get
partner.
to them. We'll get to
Yes.
them. But I really am so admiring of her, so grateful for the work she
Yes.
does, and so happy to have had her here.
Well, let's finish up on Russia.
Yeah, let's do it. First, I should make a correction. I mentioned one of the candidates for the IOC presidency that'll be voted on in September as Sergei Bubka, but he, of course, is the old Russian. He is the candidate, the old Russian pole vaulter. I called him Sergey Brin, who is the Google founder.
Okay, all right. Sir, one of the Sir guys.
My mistake.
Now, you are very active with the Queer Nation effort around this. Any action, and I came to the meeting, any actions to report?
Well, we're going to another meeting tonight to firm up some actions, but I think we will be targeting major corporations that are both Olympic sponsors and major investors in Russia. There is quite a list of them, like Coca-Cola and McDonald's
Okay.
and Procter & Gamble and stuff. So
And
they
Peter-
are absolutely appropriate
And
targets.
Peter Tatchell, the United Kingdom activist, is talking about a September 3rd International Day of Action. In advance of the G20 meeting in Russia, they're going to protest at Downing Street in London.
All Out is promoting this as a global speak out. What the idea is to ask world leaders who will be at the G20 meeting to speak out to Putin directly to stop the anti-gay stuff.
Yes.
But we want to run you through a few things that happen. What's happening? We're radicalizing the athletes. Last week we had Nick Simmons, the U.S. runner, who said he wasn't going to speak out at the World Track Championships and then did. And then we had a Swedish high jumper, a woman who painted her fingernails in rainbow colors and spoke out.
And she was chastised by the official governing body for that.
Absolutely.
Told to repaint the nails.
Well,
I mean, you can't have rainbow nails. Can you have pink nails?
Well, for all of you who
Lavender
who are
nails?
so naively and easily talking about how we should all go to the Olympics and speak out. Well, this is what's going to happen. The people who run the sports federations and events are cracking down because there is no free speech at these events.
But the Finnish Minister of Sports and Culture was there, and he waved a rainbow flag in the stands. We got a picture of him, the Finnish Minister of Sports and Culture, if we can pull that up. And then we have a picture of him waving his flag. That's him waving the flag in the stands.
In the stadium in Moscow. And there is, of course, the now famous Russian female relay team, track team, that won a gold medal. And when they got up on the medal stand, two of them suddenly kissed, much to the consternation of their teammates.
There they are. And they said, no, we're just happy. They backtracked.
Eventually, it took a couple of days of, I think, intense grilling and threats to go to the gulag before they said, oh, no, that wasn't a protest. Clearly, it was a protest. The timing was just exquisite for a protest. So the athletes are getting in on this, and it's going to be very interesting to see what does happen at the Olympics.
Well, Johnny Weir says he'll get arrested.
I wouldn't advise it, Johnny.
But there's this Russian athlete.
He's not volunteering to get arrested. He's saying maybe it will happen.
Get arrested to draw attention to the law, is what he said.
Yeah.
But this Russian runner, Isinbayeva, a pole vaulter, defended the anti-gay law and said if they promote sexual relations outside in the street, it's not acceptable, and says we're all being disrespectful to her country. And then she tried to backtrack, but it's a little late after you've said that kind of stuff.
She said she was misunderstood.
Oh, it's not my first language, English.
But she's a huge hero in Russia, and she has been designated one of the mayors of the Olympic Village, and now she is being trashed because she was such a bigot. So it's all bubbling up in ways that we couldn't have expected or anticipated, and it's really beautiful.
Like the Miss Universe pageant that's going to be in Moscow and
in November.
And
Donald Trump.
Out gay Bravo executive Andy Cohen, who has co-hosted for the last 2 years, says he won't this year because it's unsafe for gay people and it doesn't feel right as a gay man stepping foot in Russia. There he is, Andy Cohen.
Which Masha has just told us is the right attitude.
But
really what we want is Donald Trump to move the Miss Universe pageant.
Oh, Donald Trump, that great champion of gay rights.
Exactly.
Who doesn't even support same-sex marriage.
Well, this could be, you rile up the gays, and this is what happens. He's taken his life in his hands to proceed with this in Moscow. But the IOC keeps saying that they have rules against anything political or propaganda, and
you're allowed to blow a kiss. You're allowed to kiss your partner in the stands after you win.
Evidently not if you're gay.
No,
not if you're gay, because that is now defined as propaganda.
That's what Russia defines it. But people have been doing that with their partners for years.
Not so much with gay partners, because no one's been out in the sports world. It's been just a few people in the last few years. You know that perfectly well. You've sat here for 17 years. 27, actually.
Whatever it is.
Total.
Whatever it is. Whatever it is. Anyway, California...
well, the IOC, just before I get off this, an anonymous official says small gestures would not be punished, just political grandstanding. They will take a sensible approach.
Well, look, it's not a progressive organization.
Well, the USOC, which of course is part of this, has been asked about this too. I think we're going to go after them heavier.
And they say, humana.
They say the IOC will provide the leadership, and the athletes should follow Russian law. And although they do say that the Russian law is inconsistent with Olympic principles.
Well, that's why I think the Olympics have to be moved, not boycotted.
Well, don't hold your breath, but the beauty of it, as Masha has explained, is that they've all painted themselves into a corner, and none of them anticipated this, and they're all just getting squeezed to death, and nothing could be more delicious.
Now, Masha didn't give us a long list of Russian companies that we could be boycotting, but California has a Senate resolution urging the California pension funds to divest from Russia. New York Assembly member Danny O'Donnell has urged our state companies controller to just use his unilateral power to divest.
The foreign minister of Denmark says if you don't stop treating gay people badly, we will take you to the European Council and the UN. The log cabin Republicans have spoken up.
Well, they never liked Russians, did they?
Well, they don't like the vodka dump.
You know, I have to admit, I didn't support the Russian vodka boycott in the Afghanistan war, over the Afghanistan war. I thought it was just jingoism.
Look, we're in Afghanistan now. We have some nerve talking about any of this.
Correct.
A small piece of good news. I would have liked to have asked Masha about this, but the group in St. Petersburg, Coming Out St. Petersburg, had been fined for taking money from foreign people and as a foreign agent, and an appeals court has thrown out the fine. Now, that seems unusual in the Russian justice system, but the prosecutors can still go back and appeal that decision.
Okay.
The Swedish coach made the high jumper repaint her fingernails. Let me see what I've got. San Francisco gay activists are going to picket the Russian Orthodox St. Nicholas Cathedral this Sunday at 11 a.m. at 15th Street and Market. Swedish hockey players who play in the NHL and are playing in the Olympics for the Swedish team, who play for Tampa Bay and Detroit, have spoken out against the anti-gay law. I think that's all I have at the moment. Thank you.
We have a lot of other news. Before we get to all of it, I want to acknowledge the passing of a true gay pioneer, Jose Julio Surya. He died at the age of 91 in New Mexico, but he was a San Francisco native. There's his picture. There's his campaign poster in 1961. He ran for, it was the first out gay person in the United States to run for political office. He ran for supervisor. He finished 9th out of 30 candidates. I don't know how many got elected, but that's the way they do it as a group.
Yes.
He was a World War II vet, very prominent on the drag scene. He's the one who led the choruses of God Save Us, Nellie Queens in the bars.
God Save Us, Nellie Queens.
And he was the Emperor Jose the First, the widow Norton, in the Imperial Court. He was the head of the Imperial Court.
Well, he founded the Imperial Court.
And Russell Roybal, who was his first imperial grandson and the deputy director of the National Gay Lesbian Task Force, called him an icon, hero, mentor who brought laughter, camp, and fun to all and to the struggle for LGBT liberation and all people.
He founded a lot of civil rights organizations and activist organizations, including the Imperial Court. And he, after running in 1961 as the first out gay political candidate in North America, I just read, helped Harvey Milk 16 years later get elected as a supervisor in San Francisco and was a mentor to him. But Jose definitely needs to be remembered as the first.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay.
In other news, well, we did hear the Bradley Manning sentencing decision today. 35 years in military prison, credit for 3.5 years he's already served. I think that's a sort of middle ground sentence. He could have gotten a lot more. It would have been nice to give him a medal instead of putting him in prison.
I'm with you, Ms. Northrup.
Yeah, I'm discouraged to see the number of people in our community who
treat him like he's a traitor.
He violated the Espionage Act.
All I ask, and I know people have varying opinions about this, I ask you to think about the stuff that he revealed and why aren't we more upset about that?
Exactly.
Same thing with Edward Snowden.
Yes, exactly.
More about which later.
Okay.
All right, so we do some marriage stuff. The New Jersey marriage case got underway last week. The state argued that Jersey gives us all the rights under their civil unions, and that should be enough for them to get their federal rights.
Well, it's a very Alice in Wonderland kind of argument.
Ridiculous.
The court ordered that gay
think they're
people
throwing
have
the case?
equal rights. No, the court ordered that the gay people have equal rights, so we gave them civil unions and defined that as equal rights.
Yeah.
But now the federal government won't recognize civil unions. So your argument is really with the federal government instead of with New Jersey's legislature, which called it civil unions instead of marriage.
The judge in the case is not going to rule before September. Governor Christie vetoed a same-sex marriage bill there, and we don't yet have the 2/3 to overrule him. He did, of course, sign this bill against gay conversion therapy this week, and he says it hurts kids, and that's good. but-
Yes, it is good, and basically said that gay people are born gay. It's not a sin. The Liberty Council people, the right-wingers who are suing against the California law that is similar, that bars conversion therapy for minors, are also planning to come into New Jersey to sue on this.
And there's a renewed effort to pass it in New York, but we'll see.
In New Mexico, rogue actions are breaking out all over. A clerk there in Doña Ana County in southern New Mexico, Las Cruces is the main town there, decided to go ahead and start issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. And again, who knows whether any of these will stand. There are cases that have been brought in New Mexico for same-sex marriage rights. Those are in process, but this clerk said, I'm handing them out. There's no law against it, and I'm just doing it.
As is the people in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. And
well, it is spread beyond Montgomery County.
Well, what happened there was that the mayor of State College, Pennsylvania, Elizabeth Gorham, she hosted a same-sex wedding ceremony at her home. She said, I can't perform it because there's this case going on, and I was told not to do it, but she let a minister do it. The couple had gotten their license in Montgomery County, and she says she will can't wait to officiate herself.
Now, we think we've gotten past all the right-wing challenges to marriages going back into effect in California. The Supreme Court has rejected the latest challenges by the right wing.
The U.S. or the
California
Court,
Supreme
High Court?
So we think they've run out of challenges, but we'll see. I'm sure they'll still be trying.
In North Carolina, a lesbian couple was scheduled today to seek a marriage license in Madison County, and if they're refused, they're going to ask the Register of Deeds to sign an application to Maryland, where they'd like to go and get married. And apparently Maryland requires this from your home state. They could, of course, go somewhere else, but they want to test out this whole law.
We have come across these cases before, particularly internationally, where you can't go to another country to get married unless your home country signs some kind of waiver or permission slip. It's like grade school. In Hawaii, they may be calling a special legislative session to discuss same-sex marriage this year.
Okay.
We'll keep an eye on that. In other news, San Antonio, they're discussing a non-discrimination law, and a former aide to a member of the city council there released an audio recording he'd made in secret of the councilwoman talking behind closed doors about how gay people are disgusting and this is a behavioral preference.
Tell us how you really feel.
Should be banned from adopting. It's quite a little scandal.
Well, sounds like the attitudes that some people have in California. There is a group now saying that it will do a referendum to overturn the new law protecting transgender students. I don't know how credible this group is, but it's calling it a referendum to overturn co-ed bathroom bills.
Yeah.
And Equality California says it's a fringe group.
I left out a sort of marriage story. The Cedar Point Amusement Park in Ohio, a very popular amusement park, decided to do a promotion for Halloween where they would hold weddings. Not real weddings, but sort of fake Halloween-y weddings. And so a gay couple got very excited because they're big roller coaster fans. They spent a lot of time at this amusement park. They may even have met there or sort of online about going there. So, oh boy! So they tried to sign up to be part of this. And Cedar Point was so offended by this, even though they have a gay day at Cedar Point, that they shut down the whole event.
The Today Show was very resistant.
Those were legal weddings before marriage was legal in New York. This is just a Halloween. I have to give you the kicker on this.
Okay.
So the gay couple, when asked about this, said, how stupid of them to shut this down. It's just a stupid little Halloween promotional event. For God's sakes, you're getting married by a zombie. I love that.
All right. Congratulations to Kirk Clarksville, Missouri, they have become the 14th municipality in the state to include sexual orientation and gender identity in their non-discrimination policy.
And Pinellas County, Florida, has also adopted a gender identity and expression non-discrimination
Now,
policy.
couldn't we just do this for the whole United States? Well, the U.S. Senate may vote on ENDA, the Employment Non-Discrimination Act, in a month, but of course it's dead in the House. By the way, Nate Silver predicts a Republican Senate getting elected in 2014 as better than even money, and it's a big reason that we need to vote in off-year elections. If we don't change that pattern, we're going to get this is going to continue to happen. You can't just vote in presidential elections. I'm sorry for hectoring, but it's important.
Also important and serious attacks on LGBT people, particularly in New York City. In fact, the Daily News did a whole 2-page spread, City of Hate. I don't know if you can get close on that. Okay, there we go. They have
so many anti-gay attacks. Well,
maps and,
we told you about the one outside our building.
Therefore, we care about it?
Well, I'm just saying, there it is in the heart of Chelsea, the gay neighborhood.
Exactly.
That was on the night of August 13th. Sketches have been released of the alleged perpetrators.
Two of them. There are about 6 altogether.
There were about 6 altogether, and it was a gay couple walking home arm in arm after the movies. One of them was a resident of our building.
Yeah.
And then,
if you go to avp.org, I didn't give that to the control room, but avp.org, antiviolenceproject.org, they'll have those sketches and other information, and you should contact them if something happens to you.
And then in Astoria, Queens, which is considered a budding gay neighborhood in many ways, in the wee hours of Saturday, August 17th, an interracial straight married couple was with a gay guy, and they were attacked with racist and homophobic slurs. They were the ones who ended up getting beaten. The gay guy did not, but that's horrifying. So anyway, we all have a stake in taking care of this.
I'm ready to move on.
Oh, and then, we told you about Caitlin Hunt, the Florida teen who, when she was 18, she's 19 now, was arrested for having sex with her 14-year-old girlfriend. Under pretrial court order, she was forbidden contact with the younger girl. On August 9th, she was offered a plea deal for lesser non-sexual charges. This was a big cause celeb. But now she's been rearrested for repeatedly meeting with the girl and sending sexually explicit texts to her. So
not a good idea, Caitlin.
Dumb. If she did it.
Yeah.
It's alleged.
All right.
All right. Okay.
Well, let's segue to international news by saying we were amazed to hear the Glenn Greenwald story pop up this week of his boyfriend, David Miranda.
There's David Miranda being greeted by Glenn at the airport, I guess, in Rio.
Yeah.
What happened here was while he was on his way home, David was on his way home, he gets detained under this terrorist act in London's airport. They didn't get me this time. But, for 9 hours, they take all of his electronic equipment. They intimidated him and got his passwords out of him.
I would say that's stealing his belongings for no good reason. He had been meeting with the woman who had been working with Glenn on the stories about the Edward Snowden material. And so they grabbed David Miranda. And it's just astonishing to me that they could steal all his...
He's a journalist. I mean, he works with a journalist. He's, doing, it's outrageous.
There's no terrorism involved in this. This is revealing secrets they don't want revealed, but it has nothing to do with terrorism.
Absolutely not.
And they aren't subpoenaing any of this stuff.
Oh, come on. When Occupy Wall Street was down there, Bloomberg sent out the anti-terror squad. They all had T-shirts saying it. It was outrageous.
Plus, of course, the U.S. was collaborating with Britain on grabbing this guy. This wasn't something Britain did on its own.
Come on, America. You can do better than that. I'm going down to Washington this weekend for the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, and this is one of the causes, which is, peace and justice, folks. Come on.
The federal court in Springfield, Mass. Refused a plea to dismiss the case against Scott Lively, the really heinous right-wing evangelist who's been going around the world spreading hatred and violence against gay people. And the gay group in Uganda, SMUG, Sexual Minorities Uganda,
An unfortunate acronym.
has, with the cooperation of the Center for Constitutional Rights here, brought a case against Scott Lively in the United States, in his hometown of Springfield, under a U.S. law, the Alien Tort Statute, which allows people from outside the United States to sue United States citizens here if they have damaged them in these other countries. So Scott Lively said, oh, you can't come after me. What are you talking about? And the court has said, no, we're going to let this case continue. We're going to look into this.
Should be interesting.
Very interesting.
Same-sex marriages have gotten underway in New Zealand.
On a plane to begin with. Probably a promotion for the airline. And a woman who is a representative of the National Action Party in Mexico said marriage should only be for people who have sex face to face.
Right. Well, that could be our people.
Absolutely.
Germany is going to have a third gender option on birth certificates. It can be left blank when the child is born, and the child eventually can choose male, female, or neither. Nepal instituted something similar earlier this year.
Let 1,000 flowers bloom.
Okay.
In AIDS and health news, ACT UP New York did a big protest at the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene here in New York City, complaining that they are really falling down on the job and not paying enough attention to a wide range of HIV prevention. Certainly not enough education in the schools or on the streets, no education or access to pre-exposure prophylaxis or post-exposure prophylaxis. The department replied, yeah, we're working on a public education campaign. We'll get out there one of these days.
Crisis
Liars.
Crisis has been going on for 30 years.
Yeah.
New York City Council Speaker Christine Quinn, who is running for mayor here, out lesbian, criticized the New York City condom, which is a special condom wrapper, as needing improvement. Some complain the Lifestyles lubricated condom is too small. Although 35.5 million were distributed last year, the question is, if there's a problem, why not improve them now?
That's an idea. Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius is going to do a briefing on September 12th to the LGBT community, specifically about Obamacare.
Oh, I need that.
I've
been trying to understand it.
Yeah, I don't get it either. But now I'm on Medicare, so what do I care?
Good for you.
But I don't know whether this is going to be an online thing or a speech somewhere or whatever, but September 12th, you can find out what Obamacare means to you.
My insurance guy's supposed to explain it to me.
And an HIV-positive Canadian woman has been found not guilty of aggravated sexual assault for she's HIV positive. She engaged in oral sex. Now, it doesn't even say whether she was performing it or receiving it, but she had been accused of assault because she didn't disclose that she was HIV positive. That was thrown out. She was not guilty because, as the judge says, or an expert witness for the prosecution said, you have a better chance of walking down the street and having a piano land on your head than you do contracting HIV through oral sex.
Oh, well. So I've heard.
But she has still been convicted for unprotected vaginal sex without disclosing, even though her viral load is undetectable.
There are other things you can get from unprotected oral sex.
Yes. Look, I believe in protection and safety and all of that, and safety responsibility taken by all.
Okay. Entertainment news?
Sure.
All right. Well, the big news was that WWE superstar Darren Young, whose real name is Fred Rosser, 29, we have it, there he is, was asked at an airport
by TMZ in an empty baggage claim area. It looked like a setup.
Whether a WWE star could come out, and he said, well, look at me. I'm happy with myself, he said, and he hopes to be able to make a big difference.
He said, I'm gay.
Show. Yes, he did. He wants to be able to be a role model. He wants to educate. The WWE immediately put out the Today Show interview on their homepage, And, you know, he said he had been terrified of coming out. Now he's getting a lot of support. Jason Collins gave him a lot of advice. He said he overcame a speech impediment and was bullied and all that kind of stuff. But now he says he's also in love.
I think we ought to send him to Russia to take on Putin. You know how Putin
Let's have a
likes
match.
to appear in all those shirtless poses.
Let's have a match.
Putin
Who do you think would win?
I know who Putin would try to make win with his power.
He'd slip him a Mickey.
You know the CBS show that we can't watch anymore because Time Warner is not carrying
Right.
CBS, 2.5 Men? It's the old Charlie Sheen show that's now whoever is on there. They're adding a lesbian character who is coming on, and her role is the illegitimate daughter of the Charlie Sheen character who is no longer on the show. Amber Tamblyn is going to play her.
And after a 42-year relationship, Lily Tomlin is now, who's 73, is thinking about marrying Jane Wagner. Thinking about it.
Take your time.
And then
Take your time. You know, it can interfere. It can change the relationship.
And for you Nickelodeon fans, whoever plays Fred Figglehorn on there, Lucas Crookshank 19, has come out on a YouTube video. I think we're reaching the point where some of these minor celebrities, it's not really news, is it?
Well, it's
We're happy
reaching-
for everybody comes out, and I saw Lee Daniels, the butler,
Me
and
too.
I do recommend it. You know, as you said, it's a little didactic, but it was very inspirational, and I did cry quite a bit.
Out gay director Lee Daniels has made some of the most important, provocative, smaller films for years. He wrote Monsters Ball, Precious. He made Shadow Boxer. Really good films. This is more of a major epic, and I found it not as provocative. But it made me cry 3 or 4 times in the middle of the movie. I thought Oprah was excellent, and I didn't realize she had such a big role.
A lot of cameos by stars.
And it really...
And our friend Coleman Domingo is in it.
Coleman Domingo is in it. I was very happy to see that. And it, you know, I'm always, all I want to see is the documentary footage.
Yeah.
And every time they had a little piece of documentary footage of, you know, fire hoses and dogs against demonstrators and all of that, that makes me cry.
And he played that very well.
Yes.
That's the point, you see.
He's a wonderful director, and I hope someday he comes here and talks to us. Lee Daniels, please come on Gay USA, because we know you have a great story to tell, and you're a very interesting guy.
We got time for this video?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, right.
Or you could start running it. Montreal Candlelight Vigil, again, in support of LGBT Russians, and maybe we'll run a little
as we
of that
run the credits.
under the credits.
Thank you very much for being with us.
We'll see you next week.
Yes, we will.
Sharing all the world, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will lead us rainbow in the sky, rainbow in the sky, rainbow in the sky. God put a rainbow in the sky, rainbow in the sky, rainbow in the sky.
Say now God put
A rainbow in the sky,
put the rainbow
in the sky.
He put that rainbow